let's just talk a little about personal growth first, because I think it's important to create the foundation of like, why was I even looking at breathwork, or how did it come in? Because actually I wasn't looking for it. In fact, I've actually been in the past resistant to breathwork. I'm like, I need to breathe because it's what I need to do. And
did you know that what you needed the most before you were, you know what I mean? Like at what point in your introduction to breathwork were you like, oh, wow, I was resistant to this because I actually needed it?
Oh, I just realized that right now. I realized that because when I started experiencing like serious anxiety, and it's like now as I feel it in my body, that was in my late teens. And I used to like nearly hyperventilate. Like I would feel like I couldn't catch a breath. Like I'd be like gasping, and I couldn't get the breath into my lungs. And then in my my mid 20s, as I was like very much on the corporate track, I was, doing all the things, like slaying all the things that look good on LinkedIn, but was like completely unaligned. I remember going for a massage in New York. I was like visiting New York, got a massage, and the masseuse says, "You're not breathing. You're literally not breathing." And I would joke, I must be like a fish because I just have gills, like I'm breathing through osmosis. But what she meant is I was in such a state of fight or flight for so many years. I mean, I was sharing with someone the other day, it was probably 20 years of just one thing after the other that put me into, the health side is like the adrenal fatigue, the burnout, like the mono, all of those things. But I was in such a state of fight or flight, I didn't even feel safe to like fully breathe in my body. And that's exactly what I needed.
Yeah. And so how were you introduced to it?
Well, I am a personal growth, life optimization, like even a little biohacking like junkie. So I've tried all the things. And I can remember a couple of years ago, a girlfriend of mine, I think it was right in the beginning of the pandemic, she sent me, it was an 18-minute breathwork meditation. She said, "I think that you should do this. I feel like it would be really beneficial for you because you're always going, right? The busy word that I hate. Like, and I'd realized I'm like, I don't want to be busy anymore. But she sent it to me and she said, if you skip through the first 3 minutes, they're showing how to do the breath. You can just even skip through that and just listen to the prompts. And it's only 15 minutes then." And I think I had that for 2 months before I was like, all right, let me find 18 minutes to literally breathe. And I started with that and it was really helpful. And I noticed I would feel very clear. I would feel very grounded, but it still wasn't something I was doing like all of the time. I was doing it sometimes. And then in May of sometime in 2020, I had gotten introduced by like a friend to a client of his, and she had reached out. And what I don't even think I shared with you is she is very type A, very science driven, but she also is, into the spirituality. And she'd asked her spiritual coach, she's like, I need more visibility. She was fundraising for her app. I need more visibility. Like, what's the sign? And her coach was like, look for 444. Anyway, we had this introduction. She was talking to a few people, and my Zoom was 44417. And she literally is like, I saw your Zoom link and I knew. So she created this modality called hypnobreathwork. And she was looking to, fundraise for her app. She was looking to just like create more visibility and credibility around it. And I can remember, we did that first call and she decided to work with me. But she said, but before we start working together, I want to take you through a session. And I said, well, I've done breathwork. I've done somatic. I've done this. I had actually at the same retreat I met you at, it wasn't the same day, but at Caleb Craft's retreat, I had done a 2.5 or 3 hour somatic breathwork session, and it was incredibly powerful.
Wow.
And I like actually now look back and I'm like, I think I went into like a womb space. And what came out of it was I felt things. It wasn't clear, but I felt a lot of emotion. It was definitely like shadow work. And I was like, I've carried this, but I won't carry it on. But the problem that I had with that type of breath work is it didn't wrap things up with like, here's what you can do next. It was just like pulled up a lot of emotions and I felt very vulnerable and I had no idea what to do with that.
So the integration was like the huge piece. And so help me understand, I think that a lot of the listeners, watchers, however they're consuming the Butterfly Season podcast, aren't as dropped in the spiritual realm. So when you're saying shadow work, what does that mean?
Oh my gosh, I probably need to like look up an official definition.
Yeah, whatever it means to you. I'll tell you what I feel like it means to me. But
so I think that it's typically like everything is like there's light and dark, right? There's two sides of every coin. The shadow work is often going to the things that like bring us pain, whether they're ours or they're from something else, right? They've been given to us, inherited. And it's the things that if we lean into, and we're willing to go through the pain and like walk through the fire instead of ignoring it and like just allowing it to like create pain, but not actually addressing it. It's if we can go through it, we find out who we really are. And we have all of this, there's all of this reward on the other side. It's the fact that you have to go through the darkness to truly find the light. And I did a lot of that unwillingly. And I should say, like, I didn't pursue it. It's just, if you don't pursue it, what happens is the same things happen over and over.
Right. And we all have those same patterns, same lesson. It's like the same thing. I've like met the same person over and over and over again. And I have the same relationship with that person over and over and over again. And I'm like, it has nothing to do with the person, but really like, I think what I'm negatively thinking, attracting, feeling, I actually attract that same thing over and over until I heal that thing. And then I no longer attract that scenario.
Yeah, it's basically, so the breath work and shadow work, it's about working through like things that are in our subconscious, right? To uncover these pieces of ourselves, whether, typically we may be only aware of like the top, it's like the top of the iceberg. And usually this was around trauma or pieces of our personality. Especially, I think this is really important if you really want to like step in confidently to who you are without judgment. And, I'm an Enneagram 7, so I'm like, avoid pain at all costs. Shadow work is terrible. I mean, shadow work is not fun, but I was like done. I didn't want to live it anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I can either ignore doing the work and keep living out these experiences meant to teach me a lesson, or I could like actually do the work. So I started like to create this correlation between work that can feel really stretchy. And I'm not just talking about like doing work in our lives, like speaking on stage, which I've done before, launching a podcast, like all feels scary, but the fear comes from the shadow inside. That's like, well, what is this really about? Is this about being visible and then being open for criticism or for judgment, right? And where did that first show up? And what do you need to heal around that? Or how do you need to feel enough?